In today's world, we often hear that entrepreneurship is the key to economic growth, job creation, and innovation. And while that is true, we must also recognize the vital truth. Entrepreneurship does not thrive in a vacuum. It needs a foundation, and that foundation is built on education and skills. Good morning and welcome to Just Africa. I am Olumide Sokoya. I also have the handsome Oyinpreye.
Good morning to you, Olumide.
Good morning, Krumale. How are you doing?
Very good, very good.
Now, I remember when I was in school, Intro Tech was supposed to be about technology, but Intro Tech when I was in school was carpentry. In fact, the only time I went to the lab or where that was when I went to get my desk and chair for my class. And that was the last of Intro Technology.
Oh, okay. Well, for the reference you just made to Intro-Tech in secondary school, I can still remember the name of the teacher that you normally take that course. His name is Mr. Kim. I can't remember his other name. He's very, you know, those kind of teachers you don't want to offend when you were in school. He belongs to that class. In fact, corporal. He's good in what he does. But what put me off in Intro-Tech is what you refer to. It's carpentry. Probably because I consider that it's quite very demanding work. You see him with nails, with saw, he's working around with tools, and you could see his palms are hard, and okay, that's good, but you know what? Those who are involved in it, they never go hungry. Now, for the purpose of sustainable national economic development, skills acquisition through education is key. And it's a concept that any very, very intentional government will want to take up with both hands. You know, during the days of our fathers, there was availability of jobs. They were going to school, probably to secondary school or to universities, and there were already jobs available for them, both either in the public sector or in the private sector, because then relatively our population was not as large as the way it is right now.
Definitely. And
the public sector was quite a very, very, very good industry for everyone to jump in. But, you know, as we begin to expand population-wise, you know, as population begin to blow up, you see the opportunities began to shrink. And that is why every government see it like, oh, if we are going to make sure that we do not have a population that is over-bloated and unemployed, not useful economic-wise to the nation, then we must take up the strategy of, you know, skill acquisition.
Yes.
That is why every government that comes to the saddle, that takes up the political power, must make sure that there are programs, not just one, different programs in place that will not only enlighten, but equip the youths, not only with the education and the knowledge, but also with the tools for them to be independent, self-employed, so that by the time they are graduating from the university, they do not have to, you know, rely on the government or on the private sector, but they have to be, you know, independent and maybe individual employers of labor. And we must continue in that trajectory.
I remember when I was in school, I made a boat, I made a plane. I actually started as a science student, but because the man teaching chemistry, he was a veteran. He was experienced in corporal punishment, so I avoided chemistry. And that was the end of science class, and I switched to art class. But back then in GS3, I was making boats and all that. Now imagine if Intro Technology was about developing those kind of skills. Imagine what I would have turned out to be. Maybe I would have been the Einstein, or who knows what I would have been, or Steve Jobs of today and all that. But you know, it's sad to see what Intro Technology has become. And now there's this saying, let me even ask you, is school a scam?
Oh no. In fact, those who believe in that talk, they are finding, they are denying themselves. They are denying themselves something very, very significant at a very important stage of their life. There is a stage of one's life you are required to go through the hurdles of learning and acquiring knowledge. And education is that platform where you can get that. If you can't get it in education, the normal conventional education, that is why the people from the East, they took it very, very strong to engage their young ones who are coming up in the apprenticeship aspect, in learning a business or a trade as they are growing up in life. So education is not a scam. I had a conversation with some very young chaps recently, and I brought it up. I'm like, are you part of those who think? They said, no, education is not a scam. In fact, I thought they were just some young boys roaming around the street until they started telling me, no. In fact, I'm currently studying computer science in Yaba Tech, and the other one told me he's currently doing accounting in one of those institutions. I'm like, wow, I'm impressed. That's great. Please keep it up. Don't join the bandwagon that says education is a scam, because it's actually not.
Thank you very much for that. Now, before I go bring in the guest, let me whet your appetite a bit. Now, education provides us with the knowledge and theories, to strive better. And of course, the topic for today is entrepreneurship as a catalyst for economic growth and sustainable development in Africa. Our guest is on standby. He is Aikhaituamen Frederick. He is an edutech expert. He is also into enterprise development, management consulting, strategic leadership, and he is the CEO director of QC Investment. Good morning and glad to have you on the program.
Yeah, good morning and thank you for having me on Just Africa. It's an honor to join the conversation. Africa stands as a powerful crossroad, uh, blessed with human potentials, rich natural resources, and youthful energy. But for these blessings to become tangible um, growth and development, we must embrace entrepreneurship, not just as a business model, but as a mindset for transformation. So today, our discussion is timely, and we hope that it will serve as a catalyst for economic growth and sustainable development in Africa. And by the way, I would like to make some correction. It's not Aikhaituamen, it's Aikhaituamen. I get people not pronouncing the surname properly well, but it's okay. Aikhaituamen Frederick. And for the Introtech man that decided to run away, Introtech is actually a very strong course. I think when I was in junior school, it was one of my best subjects, and I happened to be the technical prefect for that particular course. And it laid the bedrock for my engineering skills. And beyond engineering, we are now engaged in business and enterprise development. So thank you. It's good to be on the show with you.
Thank you very much. Before we brought you in, my colleague and I were just, talking about if education is a scam. So let me ask you the first question. Do you believe that formal education is necessary, for entrepreneurship?
Um, Education is not a scam. I think is a misguided narrative by people who believe that because we've had symbols of certain people in the society who have gone ahead to become wealthy without any form of job, without any form of vocation, without any form of business they are doing. And because of the corruption, the ills of society, people just got into sudden wealth. So people just get to understand that education is a scam because the society seems to reward miscreants, seems to reward those who actually have not gotten jobs better than those who have gone through 12 years of basic education, who have gone through 4 years of university learning, who have gone through apprenticeship or internship program. Why those who have gone through this program are struggling, those who apparently have nothing to do with education seem to be succeeding. But that's not actually the narrative we should see. We should also see the narrative of how society is being developed by our intellectuals, because without the intellectual minds, we won't get certain successes and benefits we've had today. Despite the fact that there's a mismatch between what our school are teaching and what our market needs, that does not actually give the reason to say education is a scam. Education actually is needed to build a generation of job creators. Education is actually needed to build skills. Education is actually needed to orientate the mind. Education is actually needed to guide. Education is actually needed to provide some form of direction. And education also needs to be defined in its perspective, because some people think that education is going to the normal formal schools in order to learn the physics, chemistry, biology, or and acquire how will I call it now, the basic um, academia, but that's different. Education actually can be in form of apprenticeship. Education can also be in form of vocational training. Education can also be in form of internship. Education can also be in form of learning under a mentor. Education can also be in form of gaining some experience in certain skills so that one can actually become better at what they do. So education is not a scam. If education were to be a scam, then we're going to have issues with having doctors in our universities. We're going to have issues with having the weather not being able to measure, because if the weather is not able to measure dimensions and length and breadth, then there is going to be a problem. If education is a scam and our carpenter does not know how to do measurements of the roofing, how to do the measurement by square feet or by square meters, then we're going to have issues in buying materials. If education is a scam and the bricklayer does not know how to measure the quantity of sand and cement that it needs to get the kind of concrete it needs for building, then there's going to be a problem. So education is not a scam. Education is actually the bedrock for whatever skill we need to acquire and for whatever we need to achieve as a nation in terms of entrepreneurship and innovation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Frederick. I like that brief analysis you gave. But probably, maybe some of those young chaps who, went with that narrative that education is a scam. This is the reason they said education is a scam. First of all, I met someone who studied computer science in the university. Some 4 years or 5 years course in the university. After graduating as a student of computer science from a Nigerian university, we put him side by side with some of these young chaps who had never been to the university but who had spent almost all their life in a very popular area called Computer Village in Lagos. And that young man who went to school for 5 years to study computer science had to spend another 2 years to learn computer science from someone who had never been to school but spent all his life somewhere in Computer Village. I think you know what Computer Village or where it is and what they do. So probably that's the reason why some of these young chaps are putting that narrative forward, that education is a scam. It doesn't have anything significant to help my life. I could make meaning of my life by living in the streets. Don't you think they have an argument?
Okay, as much as they do have an argument, but that is not actually a justifiable reason to say education is a scam. I think that brings to the question certain challenges we have with our educational system. Number one, we have the mismatch problem, which you have just said. Many graduates are unemployed not because they lack education, but because the education does not match market demand. And that's because the curriculum which we use in our schools today do not align with the market required skills. I remember I used to tease young people when I used to tease educators when I go for their meetings. When we talk about computers, some schools still teach computer as an electronic machine. And I said, a computer is no longer an electronic machine. A computer has graduated from being an electric machine to becoming an intelligent machine. And that also brings to the fact that if you check in our system, because of this mismatch, if you check within our private school system, you'll see children being asked to pay for computer fees. A child will pay for computer studies fee from GSS1 to SS3. After the child has left SS3, still does not know how to use Microsoft Office. He still does not know how to use PowerPoint. That child will have to now go to a business center or somewhere to go and acquire this skill. So that brings to the question that we must begin to rework our curriculum in such a way that our curriculum meets what is expected in our market, what's expected in the from the labor market, and not until and that calls for the fact that government has a role to play. Government has to come in, rejig our curriculum in our schools in order to meet with our national economic development challenge. We don't just go to school and read all about physics, chemistry without redirecting our learning outcome to meet what the economic actually needs. And I think that's where the gap exists. Despite this gap, we understand the fact that there are opportunities for vocational learning, and those who have taken time to go to the university uh, often gets better when they eventually get to a place where they need to practice. So this is what we advocate. Rather than saying education is a scam, the university system gives people the opportunity to understand the basics better than um, understand the basic of a thought, then we also feel for them to actually get the best of our students, we should begin to include what we call entrepreneurship. We should begin to include what we call internship, apprenticeship into our learning system, such that students don't actually have to spend 4 years in the classroom. They can spend 2 years in the classroom to learn all the basic of that particular subject, and 1 year or 1.5 years to go to a workshop to learn the skills that is aligning with that subject so that they can become better students all around. And I also need to say this before I hand over to you. I think some of the things we do in our universities are actually outdated and no longer relevant. Let me give an example. I study in the UK, and I remember when I was doing one of my subjects in enterprise and business, my bachelor's in enterprise and business. For the 3 years that I had to do my bachelor's, I only did 12 courses. The first year was 4 courses: finance, business operation, business processes. The second year, marketing, and the like. And all the 12 courses I did or modules I did were directly related to what I want to study and directly preparing me for what is out there in our economy, out there in the marketplace. But that's not the case in Nigeria. If you come to a Nigeria university, a child who is doing a bachelor's, you see in the first semester, is already running about 16, 12, 16 different courses that do not have any bearing uh, bearing in his life, or do not have bearing in what actually is going to meet when he gets into the economy, when he gets into the marketplace. So I feel that is where a whole lot of work needs to happen, and we are trusting that as the government um, take uh, take on certain reforms in the educational sector, they'll be able to put all effort to ensure that our curriculum serve the needs of our economic development.
All right, thank you very, very much for that. Now, there's a particular ethnic region I will not mention that are known to be business driven. Some of them do not have luxuries of attending schools. They just take apprenticeship under their master, sell stuffs, spare parts, and the rest of them. And from there, it's amazing how they grow and how they expand and become really wealthy for themselves. But one question I would like to ask, you said you have a bachelor's in enterprise and business. So my question is, what specific skill is needed for an entrepreneur before going into the real world? What specific skill do you believe that every entrepreneur should have?
Okay, I also like to make a little correction. Number one, the people we're talking about, the region where we see our young men going to entrepreneurship or some form of apprenticeship, is not because they do not have the opportunity to actually go to school. I actually feel that given given our economic situation, that is the best route for them. For some of them, not all, for some of them to actually achieve economic freedom and make social make impactful contribution to our national life. That same group of people we've had across Nigeria, many of them in the universities who have taken to formal education rather than the apprenticeship route. We also need to understand that the apprenticeship route is also a form of education that should not be discounted. In education sector, we have what we call the traditional education, the formal education, which we're all used to. We have the non-traditional education, which actually include the apprenticeship, the internship. Now, back to your question. What skills do we need from entrepreneurs? Number one, an entrepreneur actually need four major skills. Number one, an entrepreneur should be someone who has a critical mind. It should be somebody who is able to think critically, not somebody who just got in there because he feels, well, there is no other job. Let me just look for something to sell. No, that's not entrepreneurship. Because entrepreneur is somebody who actually say, okay, there's a problem. I need to provide a solution. There's an opportunity. I need to take advantage of it. So I see a possibility in doing something different. And for somebody to do something different and create the possibility that become a global brand, or for somebody to take on an opportunity to to provide solution to the needs of society, and for somebody to say, "Oh, um, I'm going to, I'm going to work on this so that I can get not just financial freedom for myself, I can also be a business owner and do something that is unique." That person, first of all, must have a critical mind. Entrepreneurship is not for dull minds. It needs people who are good in critical thinking. Number two, an entrepreneur must actually have what we call a good communication skill. Because as an entrepreneur, you need the ability to be able to articulate your thoughts, your dreams, your goals, your plans to investors, to marketers, even to your staff, and to other partners that want to join you to scale that business. So without your ability to communicate effectively well, you may actually lose out, or people may actually lose you in that process. Number three, one of the skills entrepreneurs need is the skill of continuous learning. If an entrepreneur decides to remain where he is without learning and updating his knowledge, because we live at a time where technology is evolving, knowledge is growing. What we have yesterday may not be actually it is today. There's what we call global standard and practices for most of the work we now do. So an entrepreneur that does not update his knowledge and does not continue to learn will continue to peer back. Uh, Four, one of the skills entrepreneurs need, especially in this our climate in Nigeria, is resilience. I must tell you, it took me when I started business. I remember the first set of business I started. I just left school and I worked for about 2 years. And after working for about 2 years, I said I'm no longer working again. I've always had a dream to start my business. Guess what? The money I gathered from the 2 years work I did from the savings, I invested it in my first business, and that business was candle making. And within 6 months, I lost the entire money. I made it, the money went just like that. Why? Because I did not acquire the necessary education that will enable me scale as an entrepreneur. I didn't get education. I didn't get guide. So I just dabbled into the business because I felt I have some form of idea. And after the loss of that business within 6 months, I had to go back to do part-time teaching to raise money to get back on my business. And today is over 21 years doing business. So an entrepreneur must actually have resilience. Then finally, I'm going to warn this. Do not go into a business without getting the necessary guide. Always look for a consultant. I know here in Nigeria, if you tell an entrepreneur to look for a consultant, they'll be looking at the amount of money they are going to pay. Sometimes the money you pay before you start into business to get some form of consultation, to get some form of assistance, will save you a whole lot. Because and that will save you. You won't be like me who ran into business within 6 months and I lost all the money I took into it. And you'll be like some of our elderly men who got all their pension, all their gratuity, and the next thing they threw it in one business, and within few months the business died, and they are now looking worse off like than when they were working. Not because they didn't make tens and hundreds of millions, they didn't get that as pension. It's because when they went into that business, they did not seek guidance. They did not seek they did not get a consultant. And even when they seek consultant, many of them were looking to their children or lawyers to help them. That is actually a wrong way to go. So for entrepreneurs who want to succeed, number one, they need first. I think that should be the first thing. They need to get some form of guidance, look for consultants. Number two, their mind needs to be as sharp and open as possible, very critical. Number three, they must be able to articulate their thoughts and communicate effectively well. Number four, they should continue to learn. And number five, they should be resilient in what they do. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Now, when I looked at all these, all these things that you pointed out, it's quite a lecture, and I like the fact that I'm part of those who you're lecturing this morning, apart from our viewers out there. So the question is, some people have argued that these teachings or these classes that the entrepreneur was supposed to go through and the education that they were supposed to acquire, well, we should be considering them when they are in the university. But there's another aspect of the argument that it should start right from when children start going to school, from the primary school to the secondary school, then continues at the university level. And if we are to do this, it will have to come through the instrument of policy framework that will be initiated by the government. Do you see that possibility? Or if you were to be in a position to advise the government to influence the education system and the law that governs in that space, how would the policy look like? How would the policy advice look like?
Okay, thank you. If we're to build a generation of job creators, education must align with market demands already set so, and this includes technology, agribusiness, health, innovation, logistics, and the creative industry. And it's not just the work for government alone. The private sector must collaborate with academic institutions to redesign programs and offer mentorship, internship, and real-world exposure. It's funny when a child is just leaving the university at the age of 22, 23, and it's even worse because of ASU strike and all the kind of strikes we get in Nigeria. People get to leave the university at the age of 28, 29, and you now ask a student or somebody who just graduated, you now say there's an opening in an organization and the child must have 2-3 years experience. And sometimes I wonder, where do you want that child to get 2-3 years experience? So we get to see newbies in the market industry relying on their CVs that they've had 2-3 years experience because that child who has gone through our educational system has not in any way, maybe except those who went to do education, who have teaching practice, have not, or maybe engineering students who have 3 or 4 months IT, they've not actually in any way acquired the needed skills to be able to work. So that is actually a challenge. So I feel governments need to rework, like I said earlier, need to rework our curriculum. And our curriculum should be more of, even from nursery school, should be more of an applied kind of learning. Let me give an example. I attended a nursery school, and I saw a teacher teaching the children finger painting. The children will paint their finger, and now stamp their finger on the white paper, and the teacher will just call them. And I called the teacher. I said, "Do you know what you are doing?" I said, "See, what you have done, you have not actually taught those children. If you are going to teach those children, you should be able to teach them in such a way that what they are learning will be relevant. They will be able to see relevance in their day-to-day life." So I brought the children together, and I said, "Children, okay, let's do our finger painting again." They did that. They stamped their fingers on the white paper, and I shared the paper among them. So I said, "Spot the difference." And the children were now beginning to work, collaboration, do what they thinking they were spotting difference. I went ahead to say that you see that every one of us actually have different fingerprints. And how do we use our fingerprints? We use our fingerprints for security. We use our fingerprints for opening of the door. And that was a way of teaching knowledge in a more applicable way that relates to their day-to-day life. So we don't just do finger pricking because the teacher said we should do the finger painting. We're doing it because it relates to our day-to-day life. We'll be able to see relevance. So we should be able to help government. Government should be able to come up with a way to review our curriculum so that it become more relevant to what we need in the society. And the private sector, institutions to collaborate with private sector to be able to provide the needed skills, internship, mentorship that is needed for our young people to get the exposure they need to scale in their field of endeavor.
All right, thank you very much. And still on this particular area that you are looking at, in today's labor market, when companies or organizations, when they post or advertise vacancies for positions, there's a requirement. You see 3 years, 4 years of experience. And a fresh graduate with no years of experience, how do you expect him to fare? Then I also noticed that sometimes when you employ, I've worked in different organizations, when you employ these graduates, what they are being taught and the reality, there's a disconnect. You can imagine someone who studied mass communication and can't stand in front of a camera, can't talk and all that, and you begin to wonder what was taught. So my question is, do you believe that there is a disconnect between what is being taught in school and in the real world? And how can we bridge this gap?
Okay, I said that earlier. There is a mismatch between educational output and labor market demand. And in order to bridge this gap, there are actually three things we can do. Number one, we should be able to create internship, incubation opportunities through industrial partnership with our schools. Our university, no, from even not just university, our secondary school should not just award degrees. They should be able to build stronger ties with businesses with industries around. For example, I feel our young people have during their long vacation, the 12-week long vacation, if they are already engaged in Introtech, if they are already doing marketing, if they are already engaged in business studies, from secondary school, we should have even our secondary school should look for businesses around their community and tell and partner with this small business, this micro business, and say our children are going on holiday. We have taught them marketing, we have taught them business. Can you give them an opportunity to come and intern with you during this long vacation so that what they have taught them in the classroom they can practice? So the mismatch, the gap we have between educational output and the labor market demand can actually close. So there is need for internship, there is need for incubation, and there is need for industrial partnership. Number two, we need to create entrepreneurship centers in school. I remember that, for example, the school I went to in the UK, in fact, the two schools I went to in the UK, we have an entrepreneurship center. For one of the, in fact, when I did my undergraduate, my bachelor's in enterprise and business, and I wrote my final thesis, my lecturer called, my examiner called me, my supervisor rather called me and said, Fred, what you have written is beautiful. I am sending it to the entrepreneurs accelerator program. They need to look into it and see how you can scale this business beyond what you have written on paper to become a living enterprise. And that was done. And for a period of 3 months, I had support. I had someone to guide me on how to kickstart that business. I saw newer perspective to that business. I saw newer opportunities that I couldn't think about within that particular framework of the report I have done. And from there, I was able to scale that business to what it is today, education technology. So we need entrepreneurship centers in school, and because students do not just go to school to learn how to read and write, they do not go to school to learn the basics. They must be able to apply. And one way they can apply is if we have centers where their ideas can be brought to life. And I think number three, which is the last thing, we need what we call alumni and mentorship network. We must build an ecosystem of mentorship where successful entrepreneurs can guide the next generation. And also, which is the fourth thing, we must also prepare the mind of our young people. I have a challenge. In the last 21 years that we've been in business, there are two challenges we have. the excellent culture, let me use the word excellent culture, of our young people is actually faulty. A young person just comes to work, they are, the level of productivity is poor. And when you give them a job to do, they are lazy about it. Sometimes you have to take the hard stand for them to get job done. They don't understand time management. They don't understand what it takes to actually measure up to certain expectations. I'll give an example. We run a 3 month internship program. When we bring in Nigerian students for internship, if you tell them this internship, you only get transport as a stipend for your transport, they all run away. But at the same time, we had this pool of internship, virtual internship from the United Kingdom. There is this particular organization that provides interns for businesses globally. We applied to this company for interns. They gave us about 3 or 4 at a time. And guess what? This intern, we are not paying them. This intern, we provide, we ensure we have daily meetings with them, daily sprints. We meet at least 30, 45 minutes every day. We give them the tasks for the day. One of the things we realized that for the 12 weeks of training this international intern, their work ethics, their culture of excellence was superb. Their productivity was top notch. They were not lazy, they were not giving excuses, they were not telling us tasks were difficult. Where they did not understand things, they asked their supervisor. And within 12 weeks, we had over 98% kind of effective engagement. Now, when I put that side by side with the full-time staff that we had for internship, our engagement with the full-time staff that come for internship is about 30, 35%. In fact, we have some now that we haven't thinking of letting go, because sometimes when it's time for them to come to work, we say, sorry, this person is not available today. Sorry, he has something to attend to. Oh, sorry, there's something that happened in the home. So this culture, this lazy culture, this entitled culture needs to be worked against, so that our young people need to work. Life is not a bed of roses. There are processes, there are challenges, and there are principles they must abide with. And not until we are able also, beyond providing the network, beyond providing the education, beyond providing industrial partnership, apprenticeship, and integrating internship into our program, we must also find a way, like my Bible says, renew their mind so that they can become the best of them and turn out to be the kind of entrepreneurs and change makers that we need in the society.
Mr. Frederick Aikhaituamen, thank you very much. You have been brilliant. We do appreciate your thoughts this morning. And of course, we would hope that we would get more knowledge and invite you subsequently.
Thank you so much.
Yes, that was very, very, very powerful.
Oh, yes. I saw that he's someone who, had been very, very intentional about business, even from the onset in his career, and from the fact that he went to a specific school where, after writing a project about, and the supervisors could look at the project, I'm like, oh, I think this project that you wrote from the business perspective had the potential to bring forth yields, and it's something that you can actually upskill and make something worthwhile in your life. And they took up that responsibility to send him to the appropriate headquarters or appropriate quarters where he could be tooled. It's something that our university system, our education system needs to adopt here, not that you are graduating from the university and your final thesis after you finish writing them and submitting to the school, of which probably you must have put in some diligent work by going to the community to carry out some research and put out your own discoveries and recommendations to the governing authorities. Probably you're talking about tackling transportation in that local government area, or achieving crop development, crop productivity and farming produce, logistics and all of that. And maybe after that, the next place you find your project is the woman frying akara by the roadside, or from the suya seller somewhere in Surulere, and you begin to ask questions like, okay, this is your final thesis from the university. That means it's not useful. These are questions we must begin to ask. And the other thing we must look at is that the private institutions or government should have a way to make sure that the universities or the universities management themselves need to get a way to liaise with private institutions to sponsor research and development in the higher institutions, so that you do not just you can. There are some activities that government can't just jump in and engage
Definitely.
in because it is saddled with so much responsibilities, and some of these institutions that have responsibilities to development of the persons, the capital, the human capital investments within their domain, needs to go through their carry out so much research to make sure that okay, we have a research to do that will promote our product, and they look for some of the students in the school who could do that, or some of the lecturers in the university who could do that, and they can actually sell that. So some of these universities outside the country actually get a lot of income through research and development. We must begin, and diversification does not only mean moving away from oil to agriculture. There are other aspects that we can beam our searchlight on to make the most out of it.
I also do look forward to a time in the future whereby, in advanced countries, once you graduate from college, you can go into entrepreneurship, you can go into business, you can do so many things. And if you decide that you want to go back to university and study whatnot, no problem. The environment is enabling, it's welcoming. But here we believe that, my dad used to tell me that no matter what you want to do, you must go to university. You must finish. And once you are done, you can do whatever you want to do. But I feel at a very young age, we can start, picking out children with specific skills and encouraging them. For instance, when I was in secondary school, I used to draw. I was very artistic. But my dad used to tell me back then that, do you see those people on the roadside painting? That's where you end up if you do not go to school. So I dropped that, So then again, secondary schools that pick different students that go for competitions and all that, and they win big prizes and all that. What happens? That's the end. Probably they win a TV or something that goes into the principal's office, and but we can start developing these children. Teachers, they are the ones who have close contact with these children with special skills. So you can start to develop them. Just like rightly said, let's have vocational trainings so that while they are developing academically, they're developing their skills also, so that when they are done, they can decide, oh, I can use my degree to get a job, or I can use my vocational skills to get something or to establish myself. This is the way to go, because, outside this country, people don't even think about what your degree is. But I'm glad that today now, even in the workforce, it's your skills that matters. It's not what you have on paper. Because most people have seen that. Let's not dive into that.
Papers can be forged.
Yeah, let's not dive into that.
So in other climes, so one thing that Africa needs to be very, very intentional about is about the development of the workforce. When we look outside the continent of Africa, you look at Germany, you look at China, you look at even the UK, the United States of America, Canada. The services that are most expensive have to do with plumbing.
Thank you.
Plumbing, bricklaying. The artisanry industry is, in fact, that's actually sometimes, if not most of the time, what sustains the industry. So unlike the white-collar jobs or those who work in corporate bodies or in boardrooms, those are good as well. But that specific industry is not neglected.
Yes.
And they are not underpriced. So Africa, if we want to develop and if we want to really move or to come at par with other climes that we're looking at, we must begin to focus our attention on the people. And focusing our attention on the people requires development, capital, human capital development, capacity building. And it starts from the education sector. So maybe we need to go back to the drawing board, and the intro tech that we're talking about, we need to review it,
yes,
and redesign it in such a way that it will be appealing to the young people so that they can come in there. Today, you are not just talking about intro tech, carpentry, or furniture making. You're talking about tech, because that is the major driver of most economy and most industries. So tech is very, very key and critical. And look at the budget. Look at the budget for education every year. The United Nations, how many percentage does the United Nations recommend for the budget of each and every nation? It should be around 15%,
yes, 15%.
Or more, or maybe a little bit less. But as we speak, the budget of Nigeria, as we speak, who is going with a large chunk of it? Of course, it's going with the military.
Yes,
the military is going with a large chunk of it. Even though health is equally going a par with a large chunk of it, education is among the 5 industries, or the 5 industries that is going with some sort of large chunk of it. But it is so low compared to the United Nations requirement. So we must begin to take all this into consideration. And coupled with the fact that we need to build and put infrastructure in place, because without infrastructure, those whom you have actually trained and tooled, whose skills you have sharpened to be independent, to be self-employed, may not have a platform to run with the vision.
I don't know whether you saw a viral video. A guy was arrested. He graduated. He's good in web design, and he was giving his own testimony. He said that as a result of unemployment, he sought the services of internet fraudsters and was helping them to design websites, fake websites.
Okay.
And he fell into the wrong hand. You can imagine if he had...
Oh, I don't think he fell into the wrong hands.
He said
they were the one doing a wrong business.
Yes.
They contracted him
Yes.
to design a website for them.
Yes.
And he will be paid for his job.
Heavily.
He will be heavily paid. He's engaged into wrong business. If an internet fraudster contracts a web designer
who has sat at home for maybe 4 years, 5 years.
Okay, if a web designer has sat at home for 4 or 5 years and is contracted by Dangote to design a website.
That's Dangote.
That's Dangote.
Yes.
So you mean
how many of them are contracted by Dangote?
No. I'm just giving an example. If
Okay.
it's not Dangote, let's just say a multinational organization contracted a web designer who is so good in his work and in his craft, and he has been jobless for a while, and he's contracted by a multinational to design a website, or an organization to design a website, and he's being paid handsomely for it. That is good and noble. Fine. A fraudster contracted a web designer and paid the web designer to design a website for him. The web designer is not a fraudster.
Yes.
So the fraudster is a fraudster, because
Yes.
the fraudster is going to use that website that has been designed by the web designer for nefarious activities, for
Yes.
criminal acts.
Yes.
However, just the way a company uses a website
Yes.
for its business activities,
Yes.
which are not criminal activities, so does a fraudster uses a website for criminal activities. So in this particular case,
He's not falling into the wrong.
a fraudster.
He willingly.
He's not. No. He's doing his job. Whoever contracted him to do his job, he does his job, and he gets paid for it.
But he was arrested.
He was arrested. Why will he be arrested? Because a lawyer needs to come out and stand for him. He needs to get a lawyer to stand for him. Whether it's in Nairobi, whether it's in Nigeria, whether it's in Ghana.
He knew.
He knew. If he knows that someone contracting his services was a fraudster,
And he went ahead.
to do the service.
Yes.
If a fraudster would contract a furniture maker to make a chair for him,
Yes.
will the furniture maker become a fraudster? No.
I think that's...
He has not become a fraudster.
Well,
He's
I
not
think
a
the
fraudster.
EFCC would enlighten us
And
more.
that's-
They know the nitty-gritty about this.
except in the other case, that same fraudster that contracted him to develop a website now contracted him to manage that website.
But that's conspiracy.
No, because it will manage the website. Because if he is to manage that website, he will be managing a part of the asset, or more like the database of an organization that is into criminal activities. Or yes, it will not be managing, more like, and of course, an asset.
You make a good lawyer.
Yeah?
You make a good lawyer.
No, it's just, I think it's logic.
You'll make a good lawyer. All right, so we'll go on a short break and have Cashcraft. On Cashcraft today, we'll be looking at recycling plastic waste. We'll be back shortly.
Welcome to another episode on Cashcraft, the show that helps you see business where others see problems. Today, we're talking about plastic waste recycling, a hustle that's turning pollution into profit. Without taking much of your time today, let's dive straight into it. We start with the steps. Step 1, start with collection. Plastic is everywhere. Sachets, bottles, packaging. But for business, PET bottles are gold. Start by partnering with waste pickers, shops, schools, or run your own buyback point. Now you're going to offer incentives. It could be 100 naira per kilogram, depending on location and type. You need to do research on that actually. So once collected, bottles must be sorted by color and type. So you know, clean, clear bottles fetch more money. So pay attention. Let's go to step 2. Clean, crush, cash, nests. What am I talking about? Wash them, remove caps and labels, then crush or shred them into flakes using a plastic crusher. These flakes are what buyers, local or export, actually want. Now, clean, well-sorted flakes commands better prices. Think 200 to 350 naira per kilogram depending on quality. So with a semi-automatic line, you can process up to 1 ton daily. That's real volume and real money. Let's go to step 3. You need to know your market, your buyers, including local manufacturers or plastics textile companies. And even exporters, that's very important. You never can tell. Some flakes are shipped to India, China, Vietnam, or reused here in Nigeria to make buckets, chairs, or even new bottles. So let me give you a pro tip. You need to form relationships with aggregators or industrial buyers. And if you can process into pellets or fiber, your margins jump like boom. So step 4, add value, add impact. Don't just collect, create. Now some entrepreneurs now turn waste into tiles, paving bricks, and designer bags. I tell you, a lot is happening with recycling bottles. So you reduce plastic pollution and you add jobs while doing it. Step 5, learn the rules. This business is tied to regulations. So register with local waste authorities, and if you plan to export, get listed with NAFDAC or the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, NEPC. Now complying means credibility and access to big opportunities. Recycler, na bottle we dey see everywhere, gutter, road, market, but with correct machine, you fit make better money. The work dey stressful, but if you no lazy, e go pay. Of course, there are challenges: dirty waste, poor sorting, market fluctuation. Sometimes power supply slows down operations, but where others see nuisance, you should see niche. It's a dirty business with clean money. So here is your takeaways. Plastic recycling isn't just about helping the environment. It's a smart hustle. It's scalable, impactful, and already reshaping communities. From bottle to bank account, plastic is profit if you know the game. And I am Grace Komalafe. I'm here reminding you that waste is only waste when you waste it. Until next time, keep crafting your cash.
Welcome back to Just Africa on SIG News Television. And the report you saw there was on recycling plastic waste. I remember I had an interview with a lady, I'm trying to remember her name. So she suggested that if government, in a way to reduce waste being thrown on the streets and all that, if we could have bins, situated in different places, whereby if you drop something, if you drop a plastic or something, you get a certain amount. That would encourage people. And that's another way of recycling, our plastic waste. I also remember there was a viral video that was on Instagram and all that of people throwing stuff in the gutter, and they had to seal that building. I think it was last year during the raining season and all that. But, I know recycling is a whole lot. It's something that Nigeria really needs to look into, and we can actually make real money from it. But it's the culture. How can we encourage Nigerians to dispose this thing in a moderate manner?
Okay, so the thing is, it's not about only Nigerians. I know of Kenyans who are taking this initiative and watching other programs. You see, during Tunde Fashola's administration, you talked about waste basket being kept around the street corners. It was very, very effective. In fact, we became so conscious of it that even if you are taking mint, when you're done taking it, if you look around you and there is no waste bin, you put it in your pocket.
I still do it.
Yeah, and you walk for a distance on the street, you definitely see a waste or a trash can by the side of the road, so you can dump it. And the initiative has been there for Nigerians, for Africans, for the governing authorities to say, okay, there is a large recycling system. And a large recycling system we always find in the middle of an urban area.
Yes.
More like a metropolis, like Lagos, where there is a large recycling industry. And the government knows at this moment that it is not enough, so it should be working around the clock to make sure that that is put in place. You see those plastic waste, they drop it. And when they drop it, they're like food. They're like industrial raw materials for the industry. And that in itself, if Lagos is a city that's more than 20 million, if Nairobi falls into that category, if Kinshasa fall into that category, or some of the top major cities in Congo, they fall into that category, then those industries are going to use those raw materials. And of course, you need people and technology to work in industries. That in itself would have opened up another avenue for job provision, for the increase of technology. Even if we do not have that technology, at least it's part of those machineries that we import from Europe. And that in itself will serve as another avenue for IGR, internally generated revenue, to the government. So it's something that the government needs to continue to sound in the ears of people, not only in Nigeria, but in all African countries. The National Orientation Agency should liaise with some of these private organizations. That's in Nigeria. Well, the replica of the National Orientation Agency should do that in places like Egypt, in places like Congo, where we also have a large population, in places like South Africa. I think South Africa is almost doing well in that regard. So we need to do that to make sure that we are on our toes.
I think also that if we can have big investors collaborate with state government, federal government, and have this factory whereby you can bring all the plastic materials and recycle it and convert it to whatever.
They do. They sell. I see them convey a lot of those plastic.
Those people that carry sack.
Those are the. I can say those are the ones that use the crude method to gather and to pick.
But you see, those people now, they how will I put it? They are certain places. They are restricted to certain streets because they are being targeted, or they are being said to be working with the underworld, with the with
to commit crime,
and all that. So that method is not, it doesn't seem to be working these days.
Sustainable.
It's not sustainable and all that. So if we can have that, it will actually, then again, I remember when the Lagos State government banned styrofoam, and I thought that instead of banning it, why not have something, why not create a system whereby you can recycle these things? But you know, it came out of the need because it was blocking drainages and all that. So they had to, and they tried as much as possible to educate Nigerians that please dispose this thing well, but you know, Nigerians didn't, and well, it was banned. But all in all, if the state government, federal government can come up with ways, like we said, like Priye said earlier on, have these bean bags situated in different places. Let's breed this culture of being able to dump things in the bin and not just dump it in the gutters and all that. It blocks drainages, and when we have the raining season, we see the repercussion. I think this is where we would call it on today's episode of Just Africa. Thank you very much for watching. I am Olumide Sokoya. Have yourself a lovely day.
And I'm Oyinpreye Krumale. Many thanks for watching.